Well, hello again. Peter Saturday from Universal Dork. I'm back again today, filming in a brand new location here. So this is the new store. This is the new location of Hollywood Babylon in Portland, Oregon. Maybe I can just pick this up quick. I don't want to, you probably don't even want to see all this, but you know, you can kind of see the entire store there. There's all the VHS back there. So yeah, anyway, I don't want to bore you with this, but we're here today to talk about Corey Feldman again in another underrated, rarely talked about, absolute banger from 1991 when I say that he was still kind of in his prime. A film called Edge of Honor. See that right there? You can kind of see Corey right there. And of course, the icing on the cake here is Meredith Salenger. She appears together with Corey Feldman hot off of the success of Dream a Little Dream. So yeah, we've got another underrated Corey classic here. I know that he's pretty cheesy these days. Some people don't like him, but hey, he was a huge part of my childhood. And this is actually a film that I had never seen until very recently. I probably saw this about a year ago for the first time, and discovering that Meredith was in here because wow. Meredith back in like 1991, major league crush on her. And some people would say that Corey Feldman was also a fox in his own right. I would probably say so back then. So my last video was talking about like wilderness survival films and movies of that genre that rarely get talked about. And I would say that Edge of Honor fits into that category very nicely. And because of where I'm living here in the Pacific Northwest, it really kind of endears me to this movie even more. So I love that this film is actually filmed in Washington. I think it was Sultan, Washington. You know, a lot of these films that I watch that take place in the Pacific Northwest, I get really excited about when I'm watching them. They're like, take place in Oregon or Washington or even like Northern California, and then come to find out when you check out the filming locations of these things, a lot of them are just filmed in Canada. So like a film, even though like Rumble in the Bronx is a great movie, the fact that it's not actually the Bronx and it's like filmed in somewhere in Canada is pretty shocking to me when you come to find out. And then you watch it later and then realize, oh yeah, there's no way in hell that that's anywhere in New York City. So this takes place in the Olympic Peninsula, which is a very beautiful area in Washington that actually was lucky enough to do some camping there of my own. And luckily for me, things did not turn out the way that they did for Corey or Meredith in Edge of Honor. This is a legit high-stakes wilderness survival film, rated R too. When I popped this in for the first time, I thought for sure this was probably some sort of like PG-13 film, but this one is rated R and it goes the goddamn distance too. It will shock you in certain scenes. It pulls no punches here. And the villains in this film as well really kind of amp this up to the next level. And really one of the coolest things about Edge of Honor is that Corey Feldman here in the movie is a damn Boy Scout. And he's using all of his stuff that he's learned as a Boy Scout to defeat a bunch of super wicked madmen, arms smugglers in the Pacific Northwest. So this film really could be like a recruiting tool for the Boy Scouts. So let's get right down to business here. I'm going to read you the plot synopsis off of the back of this legit VHS here I've got of this. All right, you ready for this? Let's do it. An innocent camping trip explodes into a murderous backwoods battle as young star Corey Feldman, Stand By Me, The Goonies, Lost Boys, is pushed to the edge of honor after a group of teenage explorer scouts stumbles across a smuggler's cache of high-tech weaponry. The gun runners slaughter everyone at the scout camp and launch a merciless manhunt for the 5 remaining boys, escaping into the depths of the primeval North Forests. The resourceful scouts unleash an awesome array of deadly wilderness survival tactics as they flee their ruthless pursuers. In the vein of recent hit Toy Soldiers is a blistering, action-packed adventure that separates the men from the boys with a vengeance. So Meredith and Corey are not the only stars of this film. We have got a stacked cast of characters. I was, of course, very pleased to see as one of the main villains of this film that Michael Ironside stars as... Wait, that's not Michael Ironside. Damn it! Well, it's a guy that looks a lot like Michael Ironside. He's starring in this. He's one of the main villains of the film. His name is Blade. A pretty impressive villain here that actually has like a retractable blade that comes straight out of his sleeve of his coat. He kind of uses his blade like he's like Wolverine or something, except nowhere near as impressive, and he really doesn't use the blade very much in the movie, which is a little bit disappointing. Upon seeing a villain like this enter into the fold of a film, you see a guy with a retractable blade that comes out of his coat sleeve. That's always a good sign. Okay, so we didn't get Michael Ironside, but we do get a cameo from Werner Herzog. Okay, that's not Werner Herzog. But it is a guy that looks a lot like him, and at first I did think it was him.
Listen closely, Mr. Doofus.
That's Dubs.
Mr. Doofus.
But lastly, I gotta say, there is indeed one huge superstar in this film sharing the screen with Meredith and Corey that I've just gotta mention. I was so excited to see Patrick Swayze in the role of the villain here. Wait a second. Sorry, Don Swayze. Now, I've gotta admit, if I would not have caught the credits, the opening credits of this film, I would have definitely thought that that was fucking Patrick Swayze in the flesh there. In fact, I didn't even really know that Swayze had a brother. But indeed he does, and he looks pretty much exactly the same as Swayze. I mean, something looks a little bit off with him. You know, when you're seeing it, it's like, that's Patrick Swayze, but maybe he was on a coke bender before he filmed this movie. I don't know. I definitely don't want to insult Don Swayze here, but he is slightly less handsome than his brother Patrick. And maybe that's why Patrick kind of went to the higher levels of Hollywood, it was his damn good looks. But Don Swayze does a fantastic job in this film as one of the unpredictable, sort of unhinged madmen smugglers in the movie, sort of like a backwoods dimwit that is just way too hell-bent and way too excited to kill as many scouts as he can with his shotgun. So essentially here you're getting sort of like an ensemble cast. Like, even though Corey is on the cover of this VHS, kind of prominently featured, as well as Meredith, they are definitely not the main characters. There is not any one real main character of this movie, but the two of them are definitely very strong and prominently featured co-stars of this film, because it's basically Corey and two other guys that are kind of the main Boy Scouts that kind of get into this trouble at the beginning of the movie when they discover all of these weapons in this kind of abandoned cabin in the middle of the woods. And of course they go inside, there's all of this really cool vintage shit everywhere. They go in and they're looking around and they discover these fucking rocket launchers, so essentially bazookas. They come across these big crates full of them. And of course, when you discover a bazooka and you're in your teens in like 1990 or 1991, the first thing that you think about doing is firing that shit right in the middle of the woods, hoping that no one's gonna notice.
Are you kidding? Why don't we just keep them?
Are you nuts?
No, I'm serious. Think of the bitchin' 4th of July we could have.
So they're way too excited about finding them, but they eventually come to some sort of agreement that they're going to do the right thing. They're going to pull these things out of the cabin, and they're going to take these things to the cops the next day. And this gang of dimwit weapon smugglers led by Don Swayze, they have their boss there, who's, I would say, more closer to a numbnut. He is the guy in Seattle that's kind of calling a lot of the shots here and trying to get this weapons operation all under control. He's a real moron.
God damn it. You're letting a bunch of kids kick our asses. You want to tell that to Mr. Swede, that fucking goon of his?
Real ridiculous scene where he just kind of flips out.
That we let a bunch of candy-ass Boy Scouts take the shipment we can't deliver? Marie, get the hell out of here. And bring me some Alka-Seltzer.
Well, these guys all get in over their head when their little stash of weapons is totally lost in the woods. And Don Swayze is just like losing his shit when he finds out that this stash of weapons is gone. He discovers this little like map from the Boy Scouts that they accidentally left there. And he knows that these Boy Scouts are camped out nearby in the woods. He heads over there like a fucking maniac with his shotgun and this other dude. And they show up there and they kind of talk to one of the head scout guys. And this guy is not giving him the answers that he wants.
I really don't know what the hell you're talking about, but you can't come in here just pushing your weight around.
Don't you fuck with me.
Hey!
Don Swayze pulls out his shotgun and just starts annihilating the whole camp, including a lot of the kids in there. This movie goes there. So yeah, they completely take out this entire camp of kids. A couple of these little Boy Scouts escape and end up linking up with Corey Feldman and the other two kind of older scouts. And they take them on basically a little journey through the woods trying to escape this growing team of backwoods maniacs that Don Swayze eventually kind of gets to help him hunt these kids down. And we follow them through the woods over the course of a few days. They're making campfires and trying to lay low and trying to get away from these killers as Don Swayze is just relentless. At one point, I would say I'm almost more confused about whether Don Swayze actually wants his weapons back or he just wants to murder more people, because he does an awful lot of that in this film. And he's the catalyst in the very beginning too. We get to see this operation unfolding, and then we also witness this other storyline that's happening with Meredith Salenger, with her family, that they live in the middle of the woods. DON Swayze shows up there, and apparently Meredith's family, her brother and her father, were involved in this illegal smuggling operation as well. DON Swayze shows up, totally having a hammy again, and kills the rest of her family, her mother and her brother, right before her own eyes there. And she narrowly escapes DON Swayze's wrath of mayhem. And Meredith, come to find out, she is a total badass in this film. In fact, when she comes back into the picture and meets up with Corey Feldman and the rest of the Boy Scouts, when they are actually in a real dangerous situation with some corrupt cops as well, she shows up with a goddamn machine gun and just fucking mows down the cops there. But I am going to have to kind of call out Edge of Honor, because look at, she is like really prominently featured as, I would say, probably the primary protagonist in this film. And she is really not in this film very much. Probably the first 15 minutes and the last, I would say, 35 minutes of the film. But I would say that that would be kind of the most disappointing aspect of Edge of Honor. I've always been a huge fan of her, obviously from Dream a Little Dream, but even more so for this film called The Kiss, which I think is just a fantastic, super, super underrated film that, like Edge of Honor, is in desperate need of a fancy-ass new Blu-ray. So I hope someone will step to the table to release The Kiss and Edge of Honor. But even though her role is pretty small, it's very significant to the plot, and it is kind of a breath of fresh air when she enters into the scene. But you know, the interesting thing about Corey here is that Corey is kind of acting a little bit different in this movie. I feel like that Corey in this film, you know how he kind of like used to really, I guess I shouldn't say used to, he totally still impersonates Michael Jackson, and he went through that phase that he never grew out of. Well, in this film, I would say that Corey sounds like he's doing an impression almost of like Christian Slater, which is really bizarre.
Yeah, well, I think you already got me up a tree. That doesn't seem to be the problem. The problem is that I used all my rope, and now I can't seem to find a way down. Do you realize that with one of these things, you can just blow a plane right out of the sky? Terrorists, psychotic lesbian nuns from hell. Definitely. Let's go.
And all of this craziness sort of like culminates into a pretty fucking fulfilling and action-packed goddamn finale. It reminds me of the Ewok battle at the end of Return of the Jedi. We've got them swinging around on ropes, flying down on top of like cars and shit, kicking people in the face, and then it's like Corey's pulling a rope and then they're coming off of the top of a car. They've got all this paint on their face like they just watched Commando for the first time and are all excited to get down to business. They're utilizing sticks of dynamite. Meredith as well has a bunch of like weapons at her disposal. You even have a goddamn Boy Scout doing like the action hero, you know, where the action hero jumps and there's like a huge explosion behind them. You're seeing trees tumbling to the ground. The Boy Scouts carved out a bunch of spears the night before that they used to like impale people. They've got these contraptions that they've made that they've carved from pieces of wood, from these branches and stuff that they put in the road that they're able to utilize. I mean, some of the stuff is kind of like a little bit unbelievable. You got to have a major suspension of disbelief here to accept that these guys are pulling some of this shit off, being that there's only like 5 of them and like 2 of them are probably like 6 years old. And of course, you've got this thing directly inspired by Return of the Jedi, kind of like the double log AT-ST Walker double whammy maneuver. And then there's like Corey up in the tree in like a tree fort doing all these maneuvers with, you know, cutting ropes and shit. And they've got all of this stuff like hung up and strung up in the trees, spears and spikes. DON Swayze blows up a barn with his shotgun somehow. Don't ask me how he does that shit. So really super fun, pitch perfect finale here. I would say that the one thing that bothered me about it is that I don't think that Meredith got enough screen time in the finale, and neither does DON Swayze, to be honest. That could have really been played up in the finale a lot more, this rivalry. They've got real bad blood in between them, but unfortunately I think they really missed a really cool opportunity to do something more with them kind of facing off one-on-one. And lastly, the guy Blade, you know, Michael Ironside lookalike dude, Until He Talks, definitely not Michael Ironside. That guy is a little bit underutilized in the finale as well. I think that they really missed an opportunity with him as well, with his retractable blade. They could have done a little more of like almost like a horror thing with him. That would have been great. And then also the kind of like main dimwit, he kind of has an interesting perspective on the trees of the forest as well that leaves you kind of scratching your head. That's a little bit perplexing.
These fucking trees.
I can't believe it took me so many years to see this thing for the first time, but what a treat that was. Now, apparently Corey was having problems here on the set, so come to find out that he had just been arrested for heroin, and he was having some addiction problems at the time, and he got on the set of this film, and they had to have a drug counselor hang out with him to give him like pee-pee tests every once in a while to make sure he wasn't using. Apparently he did pretty well throughout the production of Edge of Honor, but then I believe a few months later, he was arrested again. Corey in here somehow looks like he's like 14 or 15 years old, and I would say 1990 is when this is filmed. He probably was like closer to 20. But oddly, a film that people pretty much never talk about ever. I mean, I watched this originally with a bunch of Corey Feldman fans, and literally none of them had ever even seen or heard of this thing before. I give it my highest recommendation for fans of that nostalgic vibe of the 1980s and early 90s. It's got all the right ingredients. It reminds me a little bit almost of like a lost Amblin film, an R-rated Amblin film, Kids in Danger. All right, so that's it for me today. Living in the Pacific Northwest, this is really inspiring me to get out there and do some serious wilderness survival of my own. All right, so wish me luck, and I'll see you soon.